Hello. I mentioned in a previous video about character backstories, and I like character backstories. I don't use them as I should. I don't think. But when I first started designing characters, yeah, I'd give them some backstory. You want your character to have some depth. So a lot of the time, because I used to write a lot of fiction anyway, a lot of the time I just use that moment, of create character creation to build up a backstory for them and maybe write a short story. Yeah, you can see where this is going, can't you? And then a lot of the time it was just a massive waste of time because I'd write 1,000 words or 500 words or whatever, and he'd have this background about where he grew up, things that happened to him, things that he experienced, and why he decided to go adventuring, etc. And a lot of the time, 95% of the time, it had absolutely no bearing on who the character turned out to be and what happened in the game. And this was mainly because I think when I was playing in games, it was the actual game itself that moulded the character. For example, when I first started playing MERP in 1989, I think it was, and we were running games at the time. We were running games in Middle Earth, but then because the nature of the course that the games took, we ended up setting it in like a fantasy Europe instead, which technically is Middle Earth, I suppose. But yeah, I created a character called Tears Swordsong, and he basically was just a scout. That was it. That's all he was. I hadn't created any background for him. And no, he had no history. He just turned up in the Troll Shores one day. Just went to the bridge, the inn that's there, in the last bridge, and then started asking around and going off on adventures in the Troll Shores. And I had no real idea of who he was as a character. All I know was that he wanted to make a difference. He wanted to go out in the world and experience the world, experience stuff outside of his door, basically. And who he was as a character was moulded by the game itself. So things started happening in the game. He was asked to make certain decisions. He was making moral choices. He was following up on rumours and going to certain places. Getting into fights, having to choose sides, and who he became as a person was moulded by the actual game. It had nothing to do with any backstory. I mean, he had no backstory. And I think the first time I created a backstory for a character was for a Dungeons and Dragons character, and it was a long backstory, about 1,000 words. I think he died in about the fourth game, so that was a massive waste of time, wasn't it? So I kind of got out of the habit of doing it. There's no point in creating a backstory if it doesn't matter because the character's going to go off in a different direction anyway, or the game is not going to really take notice of these amazing events that happened in his past. Oh my lord, what? His mother was the roommate of the cousin of somebody who knew the Dark Lord. Oh my gosh, doesn't make any difference whatsoever. So when at the end of Tears Swordsong's career, I think his campaign lasted about 2.5 years, and I ended up retiring him because I was so happy with the character. He'd actually gone back to the inn and with all his wealth and actually bought the inn, and this is where it all started for him. So he settled down. He was married with a couple of kids, and it was really weird because my friend was about to start a new campaign or start a new adventure, and they turned up to him and said, it was at the end of the existing adventure, and they went to his tavern and said, this has happened, and your Tears Swordsong, you've got this notoriety. Do you want to come and help? And he basically did a Captain America and went, no, I don't think I will. I'm actually happy where I am. This is it. There's other heroes out there. You don't need me. And that's where his adventures ended. Brilliant. He's still today my absolute favourite character because that game taught me quite a few things. It taught me how games you could create a story from a narrative, how players can control the flow of the story and have agency. It taught me how you could become emotionally involved with the character and the story and the NPCs, and it taught me so much more, that you could do so much more with role playing other than just roll dice and go into a dungeon and stab stuff, which is fun, don't get me wrong. And I've got to thank Paul Squire, my friend, a very good friend, who I don't talk to as much as I should, but he taught me a lot of gaming. I think we taught each other quite a lot about gaming at that point in our hobby. And yeah, I had a great time with him. So yeah, you didn't have a backstory. So yeah, I like it when the characters are moulded, because when you come back and talk about those games, I like it when characters are moulded by the games. Just to complete that thought, because when you look back on those games that you played, you remember what happened in the game. You don't remember that player B had a 200-page backstory and half a novel and and a script under option for his character, because that's not what happens in the game. It didn't influence the game. You were there to experience what was happening with your fellow players as an individual character. I also think as well sometimes backstory can get in the way a little bit, because in my experience anyway, some players expect their backstory to take a front seat because they've spent a lot of time on it and these things have happened, and this is my character, and and it's not a demand, maybe it's an expectation that the work that they've put into their character's backstory deserves the attention during the game. But the game isn't about them. The game isn't about you as an individual, unless it's a solo one-on-one game, of course. The game's not about you, it's about the group, it's about how they interact. And I've been in those games and I've felt that somebody's trying to steal the limelight. It's not about us anymore, it's about them. And that can sow a few seeds of disillusionment, and you just if you don't feel as though you're actually contributing to the game and it's all about what they get out of it, both emotionally and story and plot wise, then there's no point in you being there really. So I think what I would encourage, so after saying all that, is if you want to create a backstory to give your character some depth and knock yourself out. And a lot of backstories that I've read for certain characters and a lot of the games that I've run, especially fantasy games, strangely enough, have been really, really good. And some ideas that they've put in those backstories, I've actually had a look at and think, actually, we could do something with that. Especially if the players have put their heads together and they've all sort of intertwined. They've all said, well, actually, I've done this, so how about if my character helped you do this at this point in their lives? And those can be really interesting. That was really what was really great about Traveller character creation, because there's certain events that was happening in characters' lives during character creation before you inevitably died before play. Sometimes if you did the character creation together as a group, a lot of those players, those events, they intertwined into their own little backstories, and it was really, really cool. And it was really, really cool for that. Traveller's great for that. But yeah, I mean, backstories, yeah, they can be interesting, and sometimes they can give you some spark of adventure ideas and hooks and stuff like that. But as a player, don't expect me as a GM to make your character the central focus of the game, unless it's a one-on-one, of course, because there's more people at the table, and the story is about you as a group. It's about them. It's about them as an adventuring party. It's about the adventures that they have. It's not about a single person. You want to create backstory, fantastic. Gives your character depth and it helps you role play that character. I'm 100% on board with that. The more emotionally attached you are to the character, the more meaningful those moments in the game become. And those are the moments that you remember in games. You remember those emotional moments. You don't remember it doesn't matter about your stats a lot of the time. You don't remember what dice you rolled. You always remember the results of that roll and how you felt at that time and what your character was capable of. I did some amazing stuff with Tear Sword Song in the Merc game. I can't tell you what the stats were. I can't tell you what I rolled on the D100 dice. I can't tell you what that C critical gave me at that particular point. So C/critical, what? I don't know. But I remember the effects, and I remember how I felt about that moment, and that's what you take away from gaming, and that's what helps develop the character. That's what helps mould the character during play. And somebody just drove past really loud, then probably just ruined that moment of gravitas. So there you have it. Anyway, I just thought I'd just throw that out there. Thanks, thanks for listening. Ta-ra.